Hi everybody, my name is Stanley and I want to welcome you to Spiel mit Stan. This is my fourth run through and today I want to present you one of my favorite games, which is Agricola. And as always, I won't be teaching the strategy of the game, but the basic gameplay so you can understand how the game plays. Well, what exactly is Agricola? In Agricola you play as a farmer in the 15th century and you're trying to survive and expand your farm. Mechanically, this is basically done by worker placement and hand and resource management. The base game plays 1 to 5 players. The game designer is Uwe Rosenberg and the game was released in 2007. Agricola's current BoardGameGeek rank is 3 and as always you will find a link to the Agricola page of BoardGameGeek in the description of the video. I will be showing you the 7th German edition published by Spiel. This game is very language dependent, especially since every action on the board and every text in the game, and there's much text, is in English, but I'm trying to translate it to you as good as possible, but sometimes I think I won't be matching the real names of the occupations and minor improvements that are used in the English edition. To Agricola, one expansion has been released, which is Farmers of the Moor. It adds a new animal type, which are horses, and also you have to heat your house in the harvest, additionally to feed your people, and this can be done by chopping down the forest, for example. I don't own the expansion, so I can't tell you anything more about it. If you want to read about it, the link is as always in the description. Well, what is the goal of the game? The players are trying to expand their farm and manage their fields and different animals, and the player with the best farm basically in the end wins, because everything that you do in the farm, not everything, but many things give you victory points in the end, and you have to have a little bit of everything to not get any minus points. The players will be also using their minor improvements and occupations that are randomly dealt at the start of the game. Everyone gets a random set of 7 cards from the E deck, and using those cards will improve their chances to get a better farm. Basically, I will be demonstrating a 3-player game with occupations and improvements from the E deck randomly dealt to the players, as I have said already. Also, this is a very long run through this time. I try to cut as little as possible and do a complete voiceover of the actions, so sometimes it can be a little bit out of sync, but there won't be any hacked audio like in the last videos. So, as always, have fun watching and enjoy the run through. Now I have set up a full 3-player game of Agricola, and as always, let's first take a look at the components. In the middle we have the game board, where the players will be taking actions. There are many actions which the players can choose, and there will be coming more actions every round. On the left side we have special cards that are only inside the 3-player game. They have such a 3 on top of them. On the right we have the face cards. Each round a new face card gets revealed and allows the player to do more actions. And next to that we have the beggar cards. Those are plainly worth -3 points. On the right we have the general supply of resources and animals. Also the different tiles the players can build, like the wooden house, the clay house, the stone house, and also a field. Next to that is the food, some different multiplier markers and some extra markers. Each player starts with a personal field containing 15 fields, of which 2 are already occupied by wooden rooms. Each player also starts with 2 family members, which are represented by those discs. Since the green player is the starting player, which is represented by the yellow token, he starts with the only 2 food. Each player also receives a personal supply of 3 family members, 4 stables, and 15 wooden fences. Each player also gets a random hand of 7 occupations and 7 minor improvements. The green player also receives this phase overview and scoring overview on his hand, but we won't be using this game very much. It displays the different phases and when they will be coming out, like in which phase will be which action coming on the field. On the back we have the scoring overview, but more on that later. The other players have received 3 food each, since they are not the starting player. On the left side of the board we have the major improvements. There are 10 different major improvements, 4 of which are basically dedicated to convert different goods into food, like vegetables, sheep, boars and cattle. There is also 2 ovens which allow you to convert grain into food. Then there is a well which gives you 1 food for the next 5 rounds each. And on the bottom we also have the carpentry, the pottery and the basketry. Those allow you to convert wood, clay and reed into food in the harvest time. They also give bonus points at the end of the game, depending on how much resources you have. Now let's take a look at the green player's minor improvements and occupations. Let's first start with the minor improvements. His first improvement is the baking oven. He has to give back another oven to play this card. With this oven he can convert 2 grain for 5 food each whenever he does a baking bread action. Here he has a fruit tree. He has to put on the rounds 8 to 14, as far as they've not been played, 1 food, and whenever the round starts he gets that food. Then he has the millstone. Whenever he does the action Brotbacken as baking bread, he will get 2 additional food. He has the stable. With that he can build 1 stable, but it costs him 1 wood and he has to pass this card on since it has his arrows on them. He has the netting trough. With that he can use the major occupations clay and stone oven as minor occupations and build them also as a minor occupation with 1 resource cost of his choice less. Here he has an animal farm. He can keep 2 different kinds of animals on this card. This counts as a meadow, but not at the end of the game, so it only benefits him in the gameplay. Then he has the bureau. It costs 1 wood, and whenever he plays the bureau he can do 2 occupations after each other, but he has to pay 2 additional food for the occupation, additionally to the 1 food he has to pay nevertheless. Also for the bureau he has to have 2 occupations, and for the animal farm 1 occupation. Now for the different occupations that he has. He has the baker. Whenever he plays this card he can do an baking bread action. Also he can do a baking bread action in every harvest without doing the baking bread action itself. He has the yeoman, which allows him to only count the unused fields and beggar cards as minus points at the end of the game. He has the clay contractor. He has to put clay on the rounds 6 to 14, and whenever they are not played he gets the clay at the start of the round. He has a potter. With the potter he can convert 1 clay into 1 food in every harvest. He has the hedge supervisor. Whenever he builds at least 1 fence he gets 3 additional fence for free. He has the char burner. Whenever he or another player gets a baking improvement he gets 1 food and 1 wood. He also has the seasoning worker. Whenever he does the action day laborer he gets 1 additional wheat, and after round 6 also 1 additional vegetable. Now a small explanation about the game turn itself. Basically, every game turn starts with the same thing. A new face card is getting revealed. In this case it is saw and or baked bread. Then it's put on the first free space, and afterwards all the fields that have an arrow on them are getting refilled. So let's do this really quick. Now the players will be taking actions in clockwise order, starting with the green player. Each player can do one action and then it's the next player's turn. One action that has been taken by one player is not able to be taken by another player. And after round 4, 7, 9, 11, 13 and 14 there's a harvest. In the harvest the players have to feed their people and pay 2 food for each family member that they own. Usually the first thing in the harvest that happens is that the players first gather the resources on their fields, then they have to pay the food for the family, and afterwards, whenever you have at least 2 animals of the same kind, you get another animal of the same kind. Now let's start with the first round. The green player decides he wants to do an occupation. He chooses the seasonal worker. Now, whenever he does the day laborer action, he gets 1 wheat extra. It's the blue player's turn and he decides he wants to get the clay. The red player does an occupation. Well, he now has to pay 2 food for that, since it's the worse action than the other one. So he pays 2 food. And he decides to play the lumberjack. Whenever he gets wood, he gets 1 additional wood. Now it's the green player's turn again, and the green player decides he wants to do the day laborer action, so now he receives 2 food and 1 grain. Now it's the blue player's turn. He decides he wants to get the starting player, and also he gets the starting player token, and now he can also do a minor improvement, which he does. And he decides he takes the simple fireplace. With that he has to pay 1 clay, and he can convert different goods into food, and he pays the clay. On the red player's turn, he wants to get the wood, so he gets 3 wood, and he gets 1 additional wood since he has the lumberjack. And now the round is over and all family members return to their homes. A new face card is revealed, which is 1 major or minor improvement. So now the players can do this action. And this action is now put into the round 2. And again, everything is getting refilled. And as you notice, the different goods accumulate on the board. And the blue player is the starting player, and he decides he wants to do an occupation. And he does the occupation to the vegetable merchant. And now, whenever he takes the action 1 grain, he also receives 1 vegetable. He has to pay no food for that, since it's a free action for him. Since the first occupation is always free. Now it's the red player's turn again, and the red player decides he wants to take the starting player and also play 1 minor improvement. And he gets the fishing rod, which costs 1 wood. And now whenever he does the fishing action, he receives 1 additional food, and after round 8 even 2 additional food. He pays the wood and also receives the starting player token. The green player decides he wants to take the wood. The blue player wants to take the grain, and now he receives 1 grain and also 1 vegetable. The red player takes the fishing action, and now he receives a total of 2 food from there and 1 additional food. The green player wants to have the clay, so he takes it. And now the round is over and the players all return to their home. And the new face card is revealed, which is one sheep. So now here we'll accumulate sheep since it also has an arrow on them. And first, as always, let's refill the board. Now it's the red player's turn again, and he decides he wants to do an occupation, and he decides he wants to play the berry gatherer. And now whenever he does the action to get wood, he gets one additional food from the general supply. And of course he has to pay one food for that, since it's a second occupation and only the first occupation is free. Now the green player decides he wants to get again the starting player, so he receives the starting player token and he also plays a minor improvement, and he decides he wants to play the netting trough. He has to pay one wood for that, and now he can treat the major occupations clay and stone oven as minor occupations and pay one resource less for each of those, so he now has to pay one wood. The blue player decides he wants to get the wood from there and gets it on his board. The red player wants to get the other wood, so he gets at least something. Now he gets one additional wood and he also gets one additional food since he has the berry gatherer. The green player wants some more clay, so he gets this clay from there. The blue player wants to play a minor improvement and he decides that he gets the grain shovel, and now whenever he takes the action take one grain, he receives also one additional grain. So a total of 2 grain and 1 vegetable for him. Now the round is over and all the players again are getting home. A new face card is revealed, which is fences. Now the players can build fences and have to pay 1 wood per fence. And as always, everything is getting refilled. And the green player starts with his action, which is he decides to do an occupation. And he chooses the baker, and now he can do baking bread whenever a harvest is. He could do baking bread now, but he doesn't have an oven yet. To do baking bread he needs an oven, obviously. And he has to pay 1 food, which he does. The blue player decides that he wants to have a grain, so he now receives 2 grain and 1 vegetable for that, since he has the occupation and improvement. The red player wants to have all the reed, so he gets now 3 reed from there. The green player again wants to keep the starting player and play a minor improvement, and now since he can treat the major ovens as a minor improvement, he can now build the clay oven, since it costs him 3 clay and 1 stone, but since he has this minor improvement that allows him to pay 1 resource less, he decides he wants to pay 1 stone less, so he can just pay 3 clay and receives the oven. He also of course has to pay the clay for that. The blue player now wants to do another occupation, which costs him 2 food, and he does the occupation as a brew master, and now in every harvest he can convert 1 grain into 3 food. The red player decides that he wants to take the fishing action again, so receives another 3 food total. And now, with that, the round is over and we have a harvest. Now, let's first check the green player. The green player first usually should have to harvest any fields, but he doesn't have any fields. The green player also has a total of 2 family members, so he has to pay 2 food each, but he only has 3 food. But he has the clay oven and he has the baker, and with the baker he can now do the baking action, and he converts this grain into a total of 5 food, which he receives. And now he has to pay 4 food since he has 2 family members a total. And with that, his harvest time is already over. Now let's go to the blue player's harvest. He doesn't have enough food either to pay for his 2 family members, but he has the brewmaster, and with that he can now convert 1 grain into a total of 3 food. So he pays the grain and 1 food, and all 4 food is now paid, and with that he already finished his harvest. Now for the red player just pays 4 food, and with that his harvest is already over too. Now the red player also receives his family members back, and we go into the next round. A new phase is revealed, which is restoration. Now here you can restorate your building into a clay or stone room, but you have to pay 1 reed and 1 clay per room for a clay room and 1 stone per room for a stone room, and you can also do a minor or major improvement after that. And as always, everything will get refilled. And the green player is the first player, so he now decides that he wants to do an occupation, and he decides he wants to play the clay contractor. And now on the field 6 to 14, 1 clay is put each, so for the rest of the game he will get 1 clay every round. So let's put the clay on the field. Now it's the blue player's turn, and the blue player decides he wants to do an occupation, which costs him 2 food, and he just pays by converting 1 vegetable into 2 food with his simple hearth. And he decides to do occupation as a plow maker, and now he can, whenever he does the plow action, he can plow 1 additional acre for 1 food. The red player decides he wants to build a new room, so now the red player has to pay 5 wood and 2 reed, which he does, and he now receives another room, which he puts on top of his, since he have to play adjacent. The green player decides he wants to take 1 good of his choice, and he decides he takes a stone. The blue player wants to plow an acre, and now he does want to use the special ability of his plow maker, and has to pay 1 food for that, but he converts this vegetable into 2 food and now receives another food, and for that he can now plow 2 acres. The red player decides that he wants to get all the wood, so he now receives 6 wood and 1 wood additionally, and also he receives 1 food. And with that the round is over and the players are getting home again. The green player receives his clay, and a new phase is revealed, which in this case is family growth, and after that also 1 minor improvement. As always, the fields are getting refilled again. And since the green player is the starting player, he decides to do the first action, and he wants to stay starting player and do a minor improvement. And he decides he wants to play the millstone, and now whenever he bakes bread he can get 2 additional food from that. He also has to pay 1 stone for this minor improvement, which he does. The blue player decides he wants to take another grain, so he gets 2 grain and 1 vegetable. The red player just wants to get another occupation. He decides that he wants to play the carpenter, and now when he builds another room, he only has to pay 3 resources of this kind that he needs for the room and also to read, and he has to pay 1 food for that. The green player takes another day laborer action, so he now receives 2 food and he decides he wants to get another grain. The blue player decides that he wants to do an saw action, so he puts this like that and then he saws out. That means he puts the vegetables and grain on top of the fields, and now he receives 1 vegetable on top of every vegetable and 2 grain on top of every grain. The red player decides that he wants to do a family growth action, so now he gets another family member on top of that, and he decides that he wants to do the wagon plow. He has to have 3 occupations for that, and now he can do, whenever he does the plow action, he can plow 3 acres at once, and he has to pay 4 wood for that, which he does. And everyone is getting home again since the round is over. The green player again gets his clay and a new face card is revealed, which is in this case 1 stone. Let's again fill every space. Now it's the green player's turn again, and he decides he wants to stay starting player and also do a minor improvement. He decides that he wants to play the fruit tree. He has to have 3 occupations for that, which he has, and now on the fields 8 to 14, 1 food each is put on top of that, and he will receive that food at the start of the round. And also this card gives him 1 victory point. The blue player decides he wants to take all the reed. The red player takes the fishing action. Now he receives 3 food and he gets 1 additional food through his fishing rod. Now the green player decides that he wants to do an occupation, and he pays 1 food for that, and he gets the occupation as the hedge supervisor. And now whenever he builds a fence, he will receive 3 additional fence. The blue player wants to build a room, so he pays a total of 5 wood and 2 reed for that, and he receives a room. The red player decides that he wants to do a plow action, so he can now plow 3 fields, and he decides he wants to plow the 3 fields like this. And now he can do another action since he is the last player with another family member not used, and he gets all the wood from here. And now it's the end of the round and we get to a harvest. The green player has to pay for food, which he just does like this. The blue player first harvests the first vegetable and grain, and now he has to pay a total of 4 food. And he has 3 food, and he converts 1 grain with a brewmaster to 1 food and pays another food, so he has paid all 4 food. The red player just pays a total of 6 food, and with that his harvest is also already over. Now the players get again back to their homes, and if you want to see the extended gameplay with the 8th to 14th round, click the button, and if you want to see the final thoughts, click the other button on the screen.